There was a time when the whir of a disc tray opening felt like stepping into the future, when memory cards were treasure chests and every low-poly character carried more imagination than polygons. The original PlayStation wasn't just a console, it was a revolution in a gray box. But history remembers the giants and forgets the experiments, the risks, the beautiful oddities that dared to be different. Tonight, we dust off 15 PS1 games you forgot existed, not because they were bad, but because time buried them beneath legends. Class is in session. Let's revisit the lost chapters of the 32-bit era.
If you want to understand how experimental the PlayStation era truly was, begin with a feral child in pink shorts hunting evil pigs. Tomba masquerades as a cheerful platformer, but beneath that bright palette lies one of the most structurally daring designs of its generation. This was not a linear run-and-jump affair. It was a web of interlocking quests, environmental triggers, and conditional progression systems that felt closer to an early Metroidvania than a mascot platformer. The world design is quietly brilliant. Events chain into other events. Solving a problem in one region alters conditions in another. It rewards memory, not reflex alone. And crucially, it trusts the player to observe. Combat is simple but expressive. You grab enemies, throw them, manipulate space rather than merely deplete health bars. That physicality gives the game a tactile identity. Its greatest flaw? It looked unserious in an era obsessed with cinematic grit. Tomba didn't fail creatively. It failed commercially because it arrived too early for the vocabulary we now use to praise it. Imagine if an RPG respected time as a mechanical force. Brave fencer Musashi introduced dynamic day-night cycles that affected NPC behavior. Shops opened and closed, characters slept, schedules mattered. That may sound ordinary now, it was radical then. Combat blended light action inputs with RPG progression. You absorbed enemy abilities. You rescued townsfolk who then repopulated the world. There is civic restoration embedded into its progression loop, a subtle narrative system. Tonally, it's playful, almost mischievous, but its systems are deliberate and thoughtful. The weakness lies in pacing. Dungeons occasionally overstay their welcome, and camera constraints remind you of the era's growing pains. It remains a reminder that experimentation often hides inside humor. Square made a shooter, and not a whimsical one. Einhander is industrial, mechanical, severe. It strips the shoot-'em-up genre of color excess and replaces it with steel. The weapon system is elegant. You capture enemy weapons mid-flight, mount them above or below your craft, and strategically rotate them depending on encounter geometry. It's tactical spatial thinking under pressure. Difficulty is uncompromising. Patterns are not decorative. They're tests of composure. The soundtrack, metallic techno, reinforces a mood of existential machinery. Einhander is proof that Square's creative identity was never limited to fantasy melodrama. Combat in most late 90s RPGs was menu-driven abstraction. Legend of Legaia asked you to think in directional inputs. Its arts system required entering combinations, up, down, left, right, to execute martial techniques. This subtle shift changed rhythm. Battles felt participatory. The world is melancholic. A mist consumes civilization. The atmosphere is heavy, almost oppressive. However, repetition creeps in. Animation cycles, slow pacing, and dungeon design can feel austere. It is remembered by few, but those few remember its combat vividly, and that says something about mechanical identity.
Now we approach ambition at its most uncompromising. Vagrant Story removes towns, removes party members, removes comfort. It gives you a labyrinthine city and a weapon crafting system so granular it borders on academic study. Damage calculation considers enemy type, weapon material, affinity. It is systemic density rarely seen on console RPGs of its era. Narratively, it leans into political intrigue rather than adolescent heroism. Dialogue unfolds in theatrical framing, dramatic pauses, cinematic blocking. It can be opaque. It demands patience. It is less a game you play casually and more a thesis you study. To understand Jersey Devil, you must remember that 1997 was a year of 3D uncertainty. Developers were not refining formulas, they were inventing them. Sony's attempt at a mascot leaned heavily into gothic caricature, crooked graveyards, carnival horror enemy designs, exaggerated idle animations. Visually, it had personality. The character moves with elastic charm, and there's a theatricality to its world that feels handcrafted rather than corporate. But mechanically, the game reveals the growing pains of early 3D platforming. Camera control feels hesitant. Platform spacing sometimes lacks intuitive depth cues. The jump arc doesn't always deliver the mathematical consistency that builds player trust. In platformers, trust is everything, and when it wavers, frustration grows. Still, it represents a studio trying to carve identity during a formative moment. It may not stand beside the greats, but it helped define the road they walked.
What distinguishes Threads of Fate is not scope, it is contrast. Rue's search for identity unfolds with quiet melancholy, while Mint's aristocratic bravado injects comedic sharpness. Two perspectives reshape the same narrative space, giving the world dimension without bloating it. Combat is action-driven but approachable. Transformations allow Rue to absorb monster abilities, introducing light experimentation without overwhelming complexity. Dungeons are concise, rarely overstaying their welcome, a virtue during an era when RPG padding was common. It lacks the density of Square's flagship titles, but that restraint gives it clarity. There is a sense of design modesty, systems serving character rather than spectacle. A smaller tale told with sincerity, and sometimes that is enough. Academically, this is one of the most forward-thinking console RPGs of its time. The central tower functions as a roguelike structure. Procedurally arranged floors, randomized loot, punishing resets. Death strips you of progress within the dungeon. Yet outside it, the town evolves. Buildings rise, relationships deepen, infrastructure improves. This dual-loop progression creates psychological tension. Risk and permanence coexist. It quietly teaches players long-term investment strategy. Its combat can feel repetitive, and resource management occasionally grinds momentum to a halt. But structurally, it predicted the genre hybridization we now see in countless modern RPGs. Not widely remembered, but conceptually prophetic. Wild 9 asks a provocative question. What if platforming embraced physical dominance? The electric rig is more than a gimmick. It alters interaction philosophy. Instead of avoiding enemies, you manipulate them. You grab, swing, slam, weaponize physics. It feels kinetic and mischievous. However, mechanical boldness demands careful level design. Some stages struggle to balance spectacle with fairness. Difficulty spikes can feel abrupt rather than earned. Yet, in a crowded field of mascot imitators, Wild 9 carved a tactile identity. It dared to make contact, and that courage matters. Few games of its era feel as theatrical. Koudelka unfolds like a stage drama set within a crumbling Welsh monastery. Fully voiced dialogue gives characters emotional texture rarely heard in 1999. The pacing is slow, almost operatic. Combat occurs on small grid spaces, merging positional awareness with turn-based structure. It is methodical rather than flashy. Unfortunately, method can drift into sluggishness. Inventory constraints and lengthy battles strain patience. But atmosphere, dense, oppressive, sorrowful, saturates every corridor. Its mechanics may falter, but its mood endures.
Ready, fight!
History reduced it to the disc that carried a Final Fantasy VII demo. That reduction is unfortunate. Tobal No. 1 experimented with 3D arena movement before the genre fully stabilized. Players could sidestep freely, creating spatial mind games beyond simple left-right dueling. Its quest mode fused fighting mechanics with dungeon progression, a rare hybrid experiment. The roster was small. Competitive depth plateaued quickly. But its mechanical curiosity deserves recognition. Sometimes influence lies in experimentation, not longevity. Alundra is often lazily labeled a Zelda-like, yet that comparison misses its psychological intensity. The narrative explores grief, guilt, and trauma through dream infiltration. Villagers suffer. Nightmares manifest physically. The tone is darker than its visual style suggests. Puzzle design is exacting. Precision platforming, layered switches, timing-based navigation. The game demands attentiveness. It rarely explains itself fully, trusting the player to deduce. Frustrating at times? Certainly. But that difficulty reinforces its thematic weight. It challenges not to punish, but to demand seriousness from its audience. A mundane day spirals into escalating absurdity, and that escalation is the design thesis. Each minigame dramatizes ordinary stress, office deadlines, public embarrassment, missed transportation. The humor builds through exaggeration. Its Japanese comedic sensibility gives it cultural specificity. Mechanically uneven? Yes. Some segments shine, others falter. But as a tonal experiment, it commits fully to absurd narrative cohesion. Strange games often age better than safe ones. From the studio known for Gran Turismo came a surprising mechanical pivot. Omega Boost delivers high-speed mech combat built around lock-on aggression. You are encouraged to advance, not retreat. The camera sweeps dramatically. The spectacle is clean and disciplined. It is brief. There's little narrative embellishment, but that restraint produces focus. Every stage feels engineered for momentum rather than padding. It burns brightly, then ends before exhaustion sets in. If most fighters pursue competitive mastery, Evil Zone pursues theatrical identity. Move lists are simplified. Combos are accessible. The skill ceiling is modest. But in exchange, the game invests heavily in character framing, introductions, monologues, episodic storytelling structures. It feels like an interactive anime anthology. For competitive purists, it feels shallow. Yet for players invested in presentation and narrative texture, it offers something distinct. Not every design aims for depth. Some aim for presence. And presence, too, has value.